This is disc golf. And this is everything you need to know to play. Roll the tunes. So the objective for disc golf is to get the disc in the basket in as little throws as possible. This is a basket and this is what we're aiming for. So your first throws from a tee off area and it will look like one of these. Your next throws are then from where your disc lands. This is called a lie, and when you release the disc, your front foot has to be within an A4 sheet of paper behind the disc. Now you can also mark your lie with a mini marker and give yourself that extra little bit of distance towards the basket. So when you get closer to the basket, we do what's called a putt. It's a different technique that doesn't go as far, but it's a lot more accurate, and everyone has their own unique putting style. Within 10 metres is circle 1 or C1, and you're not allowed to step forward of your lie until you finish your putts. Most holes have a T sign with a map that's showing you where the basket is, where the tee is, and if there's any obstacles in the way. So the basic scoring is just like golf. If the hole's a par 3 and it took you 3 shots to get into the basket, you got yourself a par, or a 0 on the scorecard. 1 less than par is a birdie, 1 over par is a bogey, and the aim is to get the lowest cumulative score over 18 holes. So some basics to get you going. A backhand or a traditional frisbee throw should go forward and left. Similarly, if you spin the disc in the opposite direction with a forehand, it should go forward and right. So let's have a look at that backhand again. Now I'm not perfect, but I've got a fairly good backhand form. So my tips are, make sure you follow through, try and transfer your weight from your back foot to your front foot, and make sure you keep the disc down. A big beginner mistake is throwing too high in the air so the disc doesn't get its full flight. So I can't claim to have a good forehand, but I do know how to do shorter range forehand shots. The key tip here is to get your first and second finger in the rim of the disc, and the aim is to flick off the end of your fingers, driving the disc forwards and hopefully going forward and right. We're going to get a bit more advanced now and show you why there's a bit more of a depth to disc golf. So there's 4 types of discs, and the idea is they go different distances. So we'll start with the shortest range, which is the putter. Now you don't just use it for putting, you can use it for throwing smaller distances or approach shots. You can see by the profile it's not particularly aerodynamic, but because you throw it more gently, it's nice and controlled. So the next disc is the mid-range, and as the name suggests, it goes about a middle distance. It's a bit wider than the putter, so it's got a bit more glide and it goes a little bit further. So the third disc is a fairway driver, and this can go a long way. It's definitely a lot more aerodynamic than the other 2 discs, and it does mean it goes far. Now you may have noticed that I'm throwing these discs with a bit more power now. If I threw the fairway driver with the same power as the putter, it would not go anywhere near as far, probably not even as far as the putter itself. So that brings me onto the distance driver, and this is max distance. So I'm throwing with the maximum power I can, and it does go really far. You can see really aerodynamic, and it means I can actually crush this disc. So here's a little time lapse of me collecting the disc, going from the putter, the mid, fairway driver and the distance driver. You can see they get further and further, but bear in mind this distance is variable, and if I put more power in or less power, they go varying distances. So now I'm going to vary the release angle and show you what happens. I've got 3 discs that are pretty much the same. So I'm going to start with a hyzer angle, which means the disc is pointed away from you. It should go more left straight out of the hand. So the straight angle should go fairly straight. I know there is that little bit of fade at the end. And finally, this is the anhyzer angle. So the edge of the disc is pointed upwards, which means the disc should go forward and right, which kind of counteracts its usual flight. Now by utilising all these different angles, you can shape the flight of the disc. For example, if you've got a sharp left, you want to get around the corner quickly, so maybe a hyzer angle is what you choose. So let's pause it right there a second. I'm going to give you a quick crash course on flight numbers, basically so you know how a disc should fly before you actually throw it. So the 4 categories are speed, glide, turn and fade. So speed is fairly straightforward. It's how hard you have to throw the disc, which also equates to how far it goes. So you get putters at speed 1 right up to distance drivers at speed 14. Next is glide, and this roughly equates to how much the disc wants to stay in the air. This ranges from 1 to 7, with 7 being extremely glidey. Usually the high speed discs will also have a higher glide. The last 2 stats, turn and fade, are very much linked. For a right-handed backhand, fade is how much the disc wants to go left at the end of its flight. Turn is how much the disc wants to go to the right from the start to the middle of its flight. A disc's turn is rated from +1 to -5. And the more negative, the more it wants to go right. And fade goes from 0 to 5. The higher the number, the more it wants to go left at the end. So for example, a disc with a rating 7.5 -1.2 will be a fairway driver that's fairly glidey, will turn slightly to the right and then fade hard to the left at the end. So let's see in action changing the turn and fade of a disc. Now we've got 3 discs here of roughly the same speed. The first disc is overstable, which means it's got a high fade and not a lot of turn. And as you can see, it goes left pretty quickly. Now the middle one is a neutral disc or a stable disc. It should go fairly straight, slight turn, slight fade. And finally we have an understable disc, which means it's got a fairly high turn, so very negative turn, and a fairly low fade, so it wants to go to the right. So let's get away from that for now, and I want to show you some cool throws you can use in the round. So first up is a roller, and as the name implies, you roll it along the ground. Next is a tomahawk or a hammer, and the idea is you go up and over an obstacle. If you've got a tree in your way, you can get up and over it pretty easily. And finally, my personal favourite, the grenade. So you're gripping it upside down with your thumb. The idea is to go very high and up and over obstacles. So if you've listened this far, I hope you realise there's so much more to disc golf than you first thought. So go get your first round in at your local course, I highly recommend it. And if you need any help, leave us a comment or send us a message. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.